If you struggle with this issue, with unforgiveness, and this is a great exercise to do with your family or with your small group or with a mentor this week, especially if you're wrestling with this. A sermon's not going to solve this for you. You've got to talk about this with someone in your life. And so I challenge you to think about these 3 questions. And here's the first one. What's your motivation for not forgiving? Why is it that you're so unwilling to forgive? What's your motivation? Because I would be willing to bet that as you dug in a little bit deeper, you might find that the reason that you're unwilling to forgive is because you're not thinking about someone else. You're only thinking about yourself. Now, again, I know there might be exceptions to this because there are some people out there that have had some very, very sad and terrible things done to them, okay? And I don't want to minimize those things. But I also know there are a lot of people out there where it's just petty stuff, and you're unforgiving, and it's petty, petty stuff. And you need to examine your own heart and say, is that really godly what I'm doing? I'm walking around feeling justified in my bitterness and in my anger, but you're making a big deal out of something that maybe wasn't a big deal. So that's the first question. What's your real motivation? Are you just motivated by self? Is it just a selfish thing? Has bitterness for you in that area has it grown up out of a selfish attitude in your own heart? Here's the second question. Do you really understand grace? Remember, grace means gift. That's what grace is. It's a gift. And so again, we saw this in Colossians 3. Jesus gave us that gift, and so we should give someone else another gift. So if you're waiting for someone to be worthy of your forgiveness, then you've got the whole wrong idea of grace. Jesus didn't wait for us to be worthy of his forgiveness. He extended it. It was a gift. And think about a gift. Is a gift free? Well, it's free to the person receiving it, but it's not free to the person giving it. Maybe that's the reason that you're not extending it, is because it's going to cost you something. Well, that's kind of how grace works. It wasn't free to Jesus. Jesus went to the cross so that we could be forgiven. And there's going to be some hurt. There's going to be some cost to you. You're going to have to be willing to absorb some of the cost of that relational faux pas, or that thing that is just looming over you and that other person in relationship. Someone has got to absorb the cost. And in your unforgiveness, you're not letting anyone absorb the cost. You're hoping they're going to absorb the cost, but you're not going to absorb it, but you are, because bitterness is only hurting you. Why don't you absorb the cost in another way, like Jesus did? Why don't you just rise above it and say, you know what, I'm just willing to release this, and I absorb the cost. Grace hurts. Gifts are costly. Someone has to pay for them. If you're a follower of Jesus, you should be willing to pay for that for the sake of somebody else. Here's the third question I want you to ask. Is your sin really different? Again, when we put ourselves in the place of a victim, and we say, that person sinned against me and I'm a victim and how dare you, but I just want to ask you, is your sin really that different? Now, maybe you haven't sinned toward that person that you're harboring bitterness toward. Maybe really in your relationship with them, they've really sinned against you. But just in general, is your sin really that different? When Jesus was hanging on the cross, Jesus cried out to the Father. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now, how about for you? When you hear that, do you say, yeah, Father, forgive them? They're the ones that need forgiveness. They're the ones that need grace because they're terrible human beings. Don't you realize that when Jesus said, Father, forgive them, he was talking about all of us? He wasn't just talking about the person that has offended you. He was talking about the whole human race. We're all broken. We're all sinners. Now, there are different degrees, but we're all broken. Every one of us needs that forgiveness that Jesus has extended to us. And if you're a Christian, you should be willing to extend it to someone else.